A very good morning to you. Welcome to the West Ham Voice on a Monday morning. I hope you've had a great weekend. I'm sure you have. West Ham United played on Friday night. We got another win. We were temporarily top of the league for 12 hours or whatever it was, and we're lying fourth in the league at the moment and doing really, really well. And not only was it a great weekend for football, it was a great weekend for the weather. The sun's out. It's going to be blisteringly hot this week. What more can you ask for? By the way, please do hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the bell notification to let you know when I'm next on. And I've got to thank you all because over the weekend, I hit 4,000 subscribers. I'm absolutely chuffed. I really am. So thank you very much. But keep hitting that like button and that subscribe button if you're new to the channel. Now, what am I going to talk about? Well, I'm going to briefly talk about the transfer window because let's be honest with you. I'm certainly glad, and maybe a lot of you are as well, delighted that the transfer window has finally shut. Well, shut until January, I guess. I know I had to make a decision during the transfer window as to what videos I put out on the channel. I could have covered every single story that was out there that social media threw our way, or I could have tried to sift through the rubbish and only present the stories that I thought had some real substance. If I was chasing viewing figures, I guess I would have done the former. I would have banged out 3 or 4 videos every day talking about every single different player that was remotely linked to us. But the likely outcome of that would have probably resulted in you, the viewers, switching off, and I wouldn't have blamed you at all. So I'm quite glad I didn't go down that road. But now the window is shut, how do we rate our business? Well, 6 senior players left, or 7 if you include a player that left last January, and I'll mention him in a moment, and 4 players arrived. And immediately you're thinking, hang on a minute, are we now short? No, we're not. And I'll explain as I go along. So let's have a look at briefly at the players that we signed. One of the areas that David Moyes was really keen to improve on was central defence. Now, we got Kurt Zuma, Thilo Kehrer, Naifa Gerd, and Angelo Ogbonna, but David Moyes felt that he needed to add to that. And we all know that his prime target for central defence was Harry Maguire. We made a £30 million bid that's apparently accepted, but then the deal collapsed. And all efforts were made again to try and sign him. Loans with an option to buy, etc., etc. But the player didn't want to come to us, and that was fine. Then we were looking at other players, Bayer Leverkusen's Odilon Kasunu and Jonathan Tah of Bayer Leverkusen. But it was Tim Steidten that recommended that we look at another player that was playing in the German league, and that was Konstantinos Mavropanos of Stuttgart. The 25-year-old, we all know, he had a loan spell, not a loan spell, sorry. He moved to Arsenal earlier in his career, but that didn't work out. And he went off to Germany to forge his career there, and he's been exceptional there. Now, he's carrying a slight knock at the moment, a back injury, but we believe he'll be back ready to play after the international window. For £17 million plus add-ons, I think we've done really, really well here. Former Chelsea player and current manager of the Greek national side, Gus Poyet, said of Mavropanos, physically, he's a typical Premier League player. He won't need time to adapt. Some foreign players take time, up to 6 months, etc. But that won't be the case for this player. He's ready to shine. West Ham, so I think we've done really, really well in getting him. Now, West Ham were unable to finalise a deal for Juventus wing-back Filip Kostic. And we also looked at League One club Peterborough United defender Ronnie Edwards, who at 20 years of age was part of the under 19 squad, who won the European Championship last summer, and now at 20 years of age, he's represented England in the World Cup this year. So I think our business for defenders, we've done pretty well. In midfield, David Moyes knew he needed to bring in a solid defensive midfielder. And in Edson Alvarez, I think we've got just that. Alvarez made his debut in the 3-1 win over Brighton the weekend before last. 25 years of age, 68 caps for Mexico. He joined from Ajax for a fee of around £34.5 million for 5 years. Now, Alvarez has been on West Ham radar for quite a number of seasons, apparently. But the reason why we didn't make a move for him is because we had Declan Rice and Thomas Souček. Moyes scouts would often travel to watch Alvarez play, and the feedback was always positive. When Rice was finally sold, the club's recruitment staff looked at a number of midfielders for that defensive midfield role. And we know we were in for João Palhinha of Fulham, Scott McTominay of Man United, Chelsea's midfielder Conor Gallagher, and Fiorentina's Sofia Amrabat. Now, Palhinha was identified as the primary option, mainly because of his Premier League experience. We put in a bid of £45 million for the player, but that was turned down by Fulham. And then, of course, he got his shoulder injury, which meant that we moved on to other targets. A £40 million bid for Gallagher was refused. £30 million for McTominay was refused, and even it was suggested that we go for Amrabat. But Moyes wanted alternative options. Now, given that we've been scouting Alvarez for quite some time, it's surprising that we didn't sort of go in for him quite early and get him in before all the other options. New teammate Emerson has talked about Alvarez and said he's more defensive, but he is an animal. He works so hard. Sometimes when you watch the game, you can't see him every time with the ball, but without the ball, he's unbelievable. He runs for everyone. And I think we've all seen that ourselves in the games that he's played already. He's all over the pitch, especially in the defensive half, closing down channels, trying to close down players, etc. He's been immense. He's been a fantastic signing for us. I guess what surprises me is that despite scouting Alvarez for some time, Moyes seemed to want to go for other players beforehand, like the players I've just mentioned. But what's even further surprising, given that, is that Moyes actually, and thankfully, has put him immediately in the first team, which I think is absolutely fantastic. I think we've got a great midfielder there. And I've been saying for some time, the one thing that we've been missing is a proper defensive-minded midfielder. And I think Alvarez is going to be the glue that joins the defence and the midfield. He's going to be immense for us this season. Now, James Ward-Prowse, of course, has come in and he's fitted in pretty well, hasn't he? The England international midfielder, he's scored once and has already registered 3 goals in 3 games for the club. When the recruitment team discussed additions to this summer, he was an overwhelming choice. 28 years of age, former Southampton captain, and we know they were relegated, and we've signed him for £30 million on a 4-year deal. And he's been absolutely superb for us since he's signed. And what about our fourth signing? Well, it was early in the transfer window that Mohamed Kudus seemed destined to join Chelsea. They had made an offer to Ajax, who agreed, and they agreed personal terms for the player. And it had always been Kudus's dream to play in the Premier League, but for one reason or another, the deal stalled. And one of the reasons for stalling is because Chelsea, at the same time, were chasing Moises Caicedo from Brighton. Now we know they finally got him in through for £115 million. Kudus waited more than 2 weeks for a response from Chelsea, and the Dutch side ended up proposing a deadline of the 18th of August, which they then extended as well. And during that period, an unnamed Saudi Arabian team joined the race to sign the player, but talks never reached an advanced stage. Brighton then reached an agreement in principle with Ajax, but failed to do the same on personal terms. And Arsenal and Man United were also linked to this versatile footballer. Ajax and Kudus's representatives became frustrated with all the different teams that were meant to be in for the player, so they finally sanctioned the move to West Ham. We apparently expressed an interest in the player way back on the 6th of August. They knew that the front runners were Chelsea, but were convinced, the agents of Kudus and Kudus himself were convinced by Tim Steidten, who impressed them in talks with Kudus. Before the £38 million deal, which was the size of our third offer, Steidten flew to Bulgaria to watch Kudus score a hat-trick in the first leg of Ajax's Europa League qualifying playoff against Ludogorets. And then on the 26th of August, Kudus and Steidten flew from Amsterdam to Stansted Airport, and then by private jet, of course, and then went down to London to the training ground for Kudus to take his medical. During negotiations, Kudus raised the subject of Lucas Paquetá, Now, we all know Paquetá was due to go to Man City for, they bid £70 million and we turned that down. And then all this stuff about breaches in betting, etc. But Kudish asked about the situation with Paquetá and whether that would hinder his playing time at West Ham United. Steidten gave him assurances that even if Paquetá didn't go, it wouldn't hinder Kudish's game time at West Ham United. Kudish then accepted a 5-year deal at West Ham with an option for a further year. Look, the salary was fine. We're paying him significantly more than he was at Ajax, and we're glad to have the player over the line. David Moyes talked about the player when he said, the fact that we've been able to attract a player of his undoubted quality shows the West Ham pool, the pool that West Ham now have. The board and Tim Steidten deserve huge credit for getting this one over the line. Kudish is currently staying in an apartment and hopes to move to new accommodation within a few weeks. His mother, Mariama, who lives in Accra in Ghana, flew to London when he was unveiled as the club's fourth signing. She was also at the game on Friday night when he made his debut against Leicester. David Moyes spoke to Stephen Pienaar and John Heitinger, both of whom he had managed at Everton, to give some insight on both Kudish and Edson Alvarez. Pienaar is now the under-18 coach at Ajax, and while Heitinger was temporarily head coach for their first team. The duo recommended the signings and outlined how much both players would improve West Ham United. Now, we all know Alvarez was the first purchase in the summer transfer window, and before his arrival, there was quite a lot of frustration amongst fans following the sale of Declan Rice back in July and the gap in between Rice leaving and a player signing for the club. There were fears that the club would be embroiled in another relegation battle if signings were not made. But I guess the arrival of Alvarez, Ward-Prowse, Mavropanos, and of course Kudish for a combined total of £118 million has lifted the mood somewhat, and the results have as well. David Moyes said it felt strange we were getting any form of criticism. But I guess on behalf of the fans, with the club knowing that Declan Rice was leaving, we would have hoped that the club would have moved on transfers a lot quicker. Now, I don't think for a minute that any fan thought that we weren't going to get any players. We knew we would, but I guess it was the concern of leaving the transfers signings too late, especially with what Moyes said about last summer's transfer window, where he blamed the late arrival of players for the sluggish start that we had in the league. We were worried that this might happen again. However, it's been the opposite. 4 games in, 3 wins, and a game we drew, which we really should have won. And the feeling is it's very good indeed. 30 points away from Premier League safety. I guess we would think that our business is done. But one player remains hopeful of impressing David Moyes, and that, of course, is Jesse Lingard. The 30-year-old, who's a free agent following his release from Nottingham Forest, started training with West Ham on the 14th of August to build up his match fitness. He only made 4 appearances in 2023 for Nottingham Forest. What an absolute waste. Now, we know he impressed for us the first time he was on loan to us, 9 goals in 16 appearances and all that sort of stuff. Moyes said Jesse's doing quite well and he's getting his shape back, but there will be no discussion of Jesse just yet. When we're ready, we will do so, but he's been working hard and he's shown a great attitude towards his work. It's taken a bit of time to get him in condition. He's going to be signed. I think we all know that. He'll get a short-term deal, maybe for half a season or a whole season, but I think we're all expecting Jesse Lingard to sign. Now, what is the signing of the season so far this season? I think, apart from all the players that we've got and maybe about to get, the signing of the season has got to be Tim Steidten. I suggested this way back when we signed him in June. I suggested that he could be the most important summer signing West Ham United would make, because he will reshape the whole way we do our transfer business. And I think he's already showing that at West Ham. Now, whilst we can't credit Steidten for unearthing all the players that we've signed, I think his influence in getting players over the line has been immense. Now he's been responsible for he is responsible for player recruitment strategy, and he's been working closely with Mark Noble, our sporting director. And it's rumoured that Moyes and Steidten were struggling to work together during the early part of this window. But that notion, and I guess you would understand David Moyes doing this, has been played down. Tim has never been in the Premier League, Moyes said, but we've been getting on really well. There's been a lot of rubbish spoken. We may not agree on every player, but there would be something wrong if we did. The longer we are together, the longer we work together, the better it will become. Anybody can agree or disagree. My recruitment team talk to me every day. One will say, yeah, we like this player. Another will say, no, we don't like him. I've also got an idea of what the Premier League looks like and what is needed to make sure, first and foremost, that you're always going to remain a top flight club, and what sort of player I would need to help you do that. Whilst we're also trying to progress and finding a way of getting players who we think will be valuable assets to the team as well. Now, what do we read into this statement? I mean, it's quite interesting what he said about Steidten. The longer we are together, the longer we work together, the better it will become. Is David Moyes alluding to perhaps that his work at West Ham United isn't done just yet beyond this season? Steidten has certainly helped to get the type of players that would fit David Moyes' style, David Moyes' system. He's gone out there and he's made sure that he's got the right sort of players for David Moyes to have full trust in order to play them in within the first 11. Now, whilst many would say that it's not necessarily the most attractive form of football, it certainly is one that is most effective. And I suggest again that, and I suggested this again in a recent video, that Moyes is going to go back to what he does best. He's going to grind out results. It's going to be guts over glamour. Moyes isn't the least bit interested in whether the football is entertaining or not. It's a results business, and Moyes is here to win games. And if entertaining the public happens during winning those games in his style, then so be it. What did he say about lack of possession recently? I think it was the game against Brighton where he said, they can take the ball home if they like. I'll take the 3 points. Can the Moyes-Steidten relationship blossom? If Steidten has managed to convince David Moyes to bring in Mavropanos over his preferred target of Maguire, because there's absolutely no doubt Moyes would have continued trying to get Maguire until the last day of the transfer window. And if Steidten has made him change his mind and go for another player, of course Mavropanos has got to deliver as well. Then I guess the trust between Moyes and Steidten will only be enhanced. And Moyes may be willing to listen to further player suggestions in future transfer windows as well from Steidten. Don't write Moyes off just yet. Whether some fans like it or not, he may be at the club beyond this season as he forges a closer bond with Steidten, who, after losing the likes of Alan Irvine and Stuart Pearce, could become Moyes' new confidant. Right, what about the players that left? Well, we all know Arthur Masuaku left. He was on loan last season at Turkish club Beşiktaş, which played enough games to get him a permanent move. Nikola Vlasic, as we know, moved for £9 million, but he was also at Torino last season. We know that Manuel Lanzini has gone back to his first club, River Plate, and we wish him well there as well. To be fair, those players, Lanzini didn't play much. He made 25 appearances, but he didn't really sort of feature much. He was like bit part player last season. We know Flynn Downs has gone on a season-long loan to Southampton to get more game time, and I think he's going to do exceptionally well there as well. And, of course, Gianluca Scamacca made a move to Atalanta for £22 million. And, of course, he's hit the ground running. And why not? What a surprise. I guess the big disappointment with Scamacca is that we waited so long for a striker between Scamacca and Haller, and it just didn't work out. And I know what a lot of you think, that that's more down to Moyes than anything else. We did a scattergun approach when Scamacca left. Eli Wahi from he later joined Lens from Montpellier. Apparently, we put in a bid in for him for £30 million. We looked at Cole Palmer from Man City, who's now gone to Chelsea. Apparently, we were interested in winger Johan Bakayoko from PSV. Apparently, we also wanted We then looked at Yusuf En-Nesyri again, Hugo Ekitike again, and Gift Orban of Ghent. So there was a scattergun approach for a number of strikers. Look out for the January transfer window, because I think even though the striker hunt has proved elusive now, I think what we need to do in the January window is not make the same mistake as we did a couple of years ago, where we got no players in the January window, and that fatigued the squad somewhat. So I think we might see some movement in the January window for at least a striker. Right, that's it. Have a great day. I'm back on the West Ham Weekly on Monday night, so do join me for that. Like I said, if you're new to the channel, hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the bell notification to let you know when I'm next on. Have a great day. See you tonight. And yeah, come on, you.